Hello everyone, Shannon Flummerfeld here for Flip Schools. Welcome to the Sustaining Improvement series. This is one of 5 videos in this series set up for Central Office administrators to try to help you to understand the power of an improvement tool called the 5S and an accompanying concept called Leader Standard Work. If you haven't had a chance to listen to any of the other videos in this series, you might want to do so. They focus more on the 5S, and this one will take a look more at the Leader Standard Work concept. But let's consider, first of all, what is 5S and Leader Standard Work, and why would you need to even consider this as a central office administrator? Well, as you work in your districts and you begin to foster and train and encourage improvement to take place in instruction and really in any avenue of the district, what can sometimes happen, especially as your teachers and building administrators start to work with flipping, is there's going to be a lot of innovation that starts to occur, some smaller improvements that happen, and things can kind of very quickly escalate into lots and lots of improvements going on. And as a district administrator, you're going to want to make sure that you're able to provide leadership that's very helpful to bringing forth what really makes sense for your district in terms of best practice and being able to foster that and sustain that long term. One thing you don't want to have your district do is get very burned out by another, big idea like flipping, but rather you want to be able to help everybody get through the process and really pull out what works best for you in your particular setting. So 5S is an actual management tool. It provides a visual map that you can use as a district administrator to help with collective and collaborative engagements where you're working together to both develop and maintain improvement. And there are 5 steps that are required for this. Sorting is the first, setting, followed by shining, then standardizing, and finally sustaining. In previous videos in this series, there's been an example provided of this 5S process in regard to improving reading instruction. So you might want to take a look at those to give you a little more insight into what 5S is as a management tool. An accompanying concept to the 5S is Leader Standard Work. And so you might wonder, what is Leader Standard Work and why would I need to use this? Well, what happens with Leader Standard Work is this begins to put you into a position as a district administrator of really being a facilitator of improvement within the district in a way that is maybe different from a position that a role that you've filled before in your position. What you do with Leader Standard Work is you identify this as a leadership method that you're going to use. And through this, you're actually in a position of both modeling and even coaching what works by doing the following things. Is you're actually going to focus first on work processes and then results second. And that is the result also of using a 5S engagement, so that you're making sure that best practice is coming forward and really being captured and used in your district. So the difference here is that typically in central office you feel a lot of pressure to make sure that you get those results. And so you might talk a lot about results, and results are certainly important and critical. But the focus on results is somewhat misplaced, because if your results are off, the reason that they're off is because there's some kind of a problem in a process that's in place in your district. So if you focus on process improvement first, results will actually follow, and they can certainly be used as target conditions and metrics that you're shooting for and so on. But again, the results themselves are kind of an endless game for you, and you're better off focusing on processes. So when you're doing Leader Standard Work, that's what you're trying to accomplish, and you're really trying to bring forth this 5S engagement. So in terms of, for instance, reading instruction, a way to describe Leader Standard Work would be that you've demonstrated a long-term commitment to sustaining reading instruction improvements that have taken place after a 5S engagement. Well, what does that mean? Well, first of all, let's just take a quick review of the 5S protocol mentioned earlier in this video. What happens is you start at the beginning. This is a very ordered approach to improvement. as opposed to some other approaches that are tend to be a little more organic. This is very prescriptive. And so what we're looking at here is, first of all, using the steps of sorting and setting. Those are kind of a pair that go together. Shining, best practice, bringing it forth and standardizing it. That's sort of another pair. And then finally sustaining it. So this 5S protocol is then supported by the concept of leader standard work. And so what you're trying to do here with leader standard work is look at four things: structures, people, internal forces, and practices. And as you look at these, what you want to be able to do is make sure that they actually are contributing and helping people to engage in value-added work. So for instance, structures should be enablers of value-added work. And in many cases, we have structures that actually get in the way. They're barriers, they're roadblocks to doing something that is really value added. So you want to take a look at, what does the organizational chart look like? How do things flow? What are the responsibilities? How do I use time? How do we use space in the district? How do we use a structure supporting technology, for instance, instructional technology? So all these things are possible points where you can actually foster leader standard work by thinking about structure as an enabler of value-added work. The other idea here that's a really big concept is that people are the engagers of value-added work. With leader standard work, the way that it doesn't tend to work very well is with mandates. So what you want to be here is not as much a director as a facilitator. And what you're going to do is actually throw the problem identification and problem solving activity to people, and you'll facilitate that, you'll coach them through that, you'll observe that, and but you actually want them to be engaged in creating value-added work. You could sit in your office and think of all kinds of solutions that you think are value-added, but unless people are engaged in actually the process improvement part of it to get to the better results, it's really hard for that excitement to happen that can happen in this way. The other thing that you have at your disposal is something called internal forces. So look around in your district. What do you have? Do you have particularly talented people, for instance, in the financial management offices? Do you have really engaged students in terms of their athletic abilities and accomplishments? Do you have a wonderful robotics program or an extremely strong international baccalaureate program? You must have something in your district that is a very positive internal force. If you can capture that and understand how to use that as an envoy of value-added work, that will really help a lot with leader standard work. Again, you work so hard as a central office administrator, you want to make sure that you're really getting the most out of the time and energy investment that you're putting in, and leader standard work will help you to do that. Another way to demonstrate your long-term commitment to the 5S process is by making sure that practices are viewed as enforcers of value-added work. So once you go through all the trouble of process improvement and you're getting better results, you want to make sure that practices actually set in that become sustained so that value-added work continues on and on. Practices are like the expression of what matters. And so, if you don't really care and you let practice go one way or the other, then you're not reinforcing what value-added work is. So think about structures, people, internal forces, and practices as ways of understanding leader standard work better. You might wonder, what does it look like to engage as a practitioner of leader standard work? Well, the way that it looks, these are some practices here that people have shared with us and help us to understand how this works. And so what you'll do, again, you'll foster the 5S process, and then all the way through that process and beyond, you'll make sure that you use these techniques. One of them is visual management. Visual management is such a strong practice, and we have so many data sets available to us in schools. Those data sets remain data unless we do some work with them to make them into information. And when we have information, then we can make better decisions. Visual management tools can help you to do that. They can help you to bring forth the important data sets, feature them either on data walls or in some kind of dashboards or collaborative spaces, and it can help you to reinforce, look, here's what we really care about. Here are our shared measures of performance. And again, things that are aligned with your strategic plan, with your mission, with your vision. These are the kinds of things that you want to use in visual management. And when people begin to understand that, again, it creates a sense of collaborative engagement around sustaining best practice. Another thing you can do is lead by going to Gemba and working with people at Gemba using respect and coaching. Gemba is where the actual work takes place. So if you're focused on improving reading instruction, you need to make sure that you understand what is going on in the school improvement committee that selects reading curriculum. What happens in a response to intervention process, and actually go there and, once in a while go around and visit. And you'll get a chance in those visits not just to quietly observe and script and take notes like you would with a traditional teacher evaluation, but you actually want to get involved in leading at Gemba and coaching people so that, if they're not focusing on process and they're not getting better results, or there's some things that they're not doing to maintain the 5S protocol that's been put forth, then, you go ahead and you can talk about that. And you do that again with respect and coaching. Leading at Gemba is not about trying to catch people doing something wrong, but to try to help people to unpack and rethink and improve what's going on. Another thing is to not be afraid to use a just-in-time intervention. And what I mean by that is, when you're concerned about a paradigm that might be off base, or a practice that's floundering, or a process that needs improvement, actually take the time, because process matters and you need to fix processes if you want results to improve. So take the time to go ahead and discuss what's going on. You can just say, time out. Listen, we need to examine this paradigm. What is the paradigm that we're using for right to intervention pre-qualification for students? Why are we thinking that it has to be such a long, involved process? What is our practice like? How can we improve this process? And to actually just take the time to stop and provide an intervention just in time. And to accompany that, high-level frequent communication to demonstrate that you're being transparent as a leader, that you're not retaining information at the top and only sharing bits and pieces of things with people. Let's keep the communication going. When improvements are made, share those. When successes are obtained, make sure that that's communicated and that respect is due where it belongs. And another thing to think about is that a lot of times leaders think that it's really nice to pit buildings against each other and have a competitive environment, one principal against another principal and so on. But actually, research shows us that high-performing and cross-functional teams in a collaborative environment are much more effective in terms of getting to process improvement and better results. When you have high levels of competition and silos in your organization, people are going to be sitting on information. They're not going to be sharing and best practice, and they're not going to be interested in standardizing and sustaining that. So getting to this idea that, we're working together and not being afraid to put together cross-functional teams where it's appropriate, even from different employee groups working together to understand programs is an effective way to do this. So these are some ways that practitioners of Leader Standard work try to approach the job of leading. I hope that some of these suggestions have prompted your thinking about how to be effective as you're working with flipping your schools, and really understanding that it's quick to flip, but it takes some deeper thinking to improve, and that you want to put both of those concepts together. When you go to the Flip Institute website at theflipinstitute.com, you'll find more information there for you if you're interested. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for listening.